So look, you're all really, really welcome tonight. It's a great pleasure to host Rex Lascelles here with me tonight. And this is part of an event that's hosted by the Orinoco Flows community, which is a community that I suppose came into being, would you say, Rex, about a year or 2 years ago?
Came into being a little bit more than a year ago, like in April 2022. Yeah.
Yes. And it's an organization, a very small organization that's growing, that seeks to support each one of us to discover our fullest expression. And today, we really want to explore what is missing in the menopause conversation. And we welcome your questions in the chat. And we'd love to know where you are on the journey, if you support others, or if there's something that is directly relevant for you. Because in a way, I think that's what we're about, to make this really relevant for you. Not just a piece of chewing gum that you can eat and spit out and move on to the next thing. It's something that will be practically useful and of benefit. The menopause becomes relevant for all of us when we see our life as one big continuum, as part of a mandala, if you will, of the wholeness of family and as a part of our whole person care. We might ask, what is a mandala? And in Rex's words, he described it as a vast, ever-expanding circle at the center of which our soul resides, which I find quite a beautiful statement. So I wondered if we could just begin by, in a way, picturing our own mandala. And let me explain what I mean by that. Like, could we just begin with the very seed of ourselves, as in begin with what was surrounding us at our very birth? Can we picture for a moment the atmosphere, the culture, our DNA, our parents, our grandparents, the totality of our ancestral family tree? All of you, every little bit of you, spiraling out from the pulsing unity of masculine and feminine energies. So let's just take a moment to even sense into that sense of our own mandala in our very bodies. That very first transition from the depths of our womb, the womb that we came from, as you sought to connect and belong in this strange and crazy world. And Dr. William Emerson, one of my teachers, pointed out that many of us find it so hard to be in a body at all. And then perhaps we have that sense that we want to return, and we have that a little bit of sense of a divine homesickness, as he called it, looking for that core link to our first home. So yes, there is that sense of birth as being a continuum, absolutely. And today, Rex, this is really what we're about today with the aspect of the menopause. We're here tonight to show how the feminine biological experience directly wires women to the natural rhythms of the moon and the cosmos. So you could say we have a little bit of an advantage in a way. We have that constant opportunity, that constant invitation to connect through our biological body as well, just pulling the pulls and tugs of the first period through to the pulls and tugs of labor, and then the flux of menopause, constantly reminding us of those natural rhythms of nature. So many might say that all of this kind of stuff, this kind of talk, is something that should be done with women only. So some people might ask, well, what's Rex Lascelles doing in this group of, this hen house that's all of clucking about the menopause? What is this person doing? But that's where we come back to this sense of the mandala, of the fracturing of masculine and feminine. Isn't that really the core of our wounding as women, to say that there's things that matter to us and there's things that matter to you? That in itself is a very painful place, a very painful polarity to rest within. So yes, enough about me, but I would just love you to get to know Rex in the way that I feel I'm getting to know Rex. And Rex is the kind of person that you don't get to know all of a sudden. It might take a little bit of time. And I've had the great opportunity of time with Rex, of knowing him for, about over 30 years. He's coached me personally, certainly helped me to coast through my menopause journey, which I'm sure is continuing to unfold. For those who don't know him already, he's an internationally renowned trainer in the Japanese healing art of shiatsu. Rex's knowledge of Chinese medicine and the 5 elements has supported thousands, and I'm not even sure if that's accurate, but over 5 decades, he's supported thousands of clients in many, many different ways. And even though he's a little bit shy about this, Rex, it has to be said, is a global authority and author on Oriental astrology. And his latest book is really a great compendium to return to again and again, The Alchemy of Time and Your Emotions, which I find it's kind of a handbook that I just have next to me and find it invaluable with clients. So Rex, we could go on about that, but I would love you to take us right now, if you could, to the core of what your sense of the missing link in the menopause and menopause conversation. Is there a wounding there, or what is it that draws you to this topic?
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah, and thanks for our guest to be here with me this evening. Who I am in this conversation very much has to do with who my parents were, and especially my grandmother. So here it is. I'm born in Trinidad and Tobago, and with my parents, they had this capacity to read the signs. In other words, it was a whole matriarchal situation. My father could do it and my mother could do it, and it was always at 100% accuracy. So the whole aspect of the relatedness to space and the signals that space was giving was present. And to answer your question, Sarah's regards, like what is at the core of this menopause conversation, it's really the aspect of birth. And that may sound surprising. We're speaking about menopause and how does birth come into this? Yes, the whole experience, one of the aspect of the fragmentation, especially in the journey that women have, the biological journey of the transitions from that first monthly cycle to the experience towards the end of closing off that cycle. That closing off of the cycle tends to only come up a few years before it occurs. Whereas for the mother to know about, the mother-to-be to know about this also informs the child to be in that realm of the unconscious, because, we are always hearing, even when in our mother's belly, during our mother's pregnancy with us. So for that to be told, the child then at 20, 30 years of age or whatever, the mother is in a different place with herself, and the child somehow knows that because the mother was informed about it rather than just suddenly told about it. So that fragmentation is healed by this aspect of, I like to call it biological sovereignty that women have. Mm. Men, it's not quite that way because our sovereignty comes from our head. With men, the idea, well, you're successful in what you do or blah, blah, blah. Whereas for women, the cosmic connection is where it's how it's at. There's a whole cosmic connection because that is what started that first monthly cycle. And then towards the end, that time as the menopause starts, the premenopause experience, that space, that cosmic aspect, it starts changing. So hopefully I answered the question with all those bits that I think, but
let me just see if I've got that right. So are you saying to me that the thing that you don't hear in the menopause conversation is the idea of nature, the idea of the cosmos, and that biological link with that.
Exactly. It's a fixed conversation that I have observed, and it's very patriarchal in the sense of the realm of medicine and the realm of the magazines. They informing this is happening, take this pill, drink this, do that. It's a fix-it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are to go back to the wisdom of the ancestors, it's like the connection with nature and the connection with changing the rhythm, the connection with eating differently, of being in harmony with that was present. Yes, at times there were challenges within that and the ancestral line. I'm not denying that, but that knowledge was there and that go-to aspect was there. And my conversation, or what I am bringing to the conversation, is returning to that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm of the view that this is very important also in the environment in which we are living in, where artificial intelligence is dominating so much of the experiences of people now, and the aspect of moving away from a listening to their body. So that listening to your body is very important, like what works for you, that listening, rather than, I need to fix it.
So Rex, if I was to be a little bit difficult, and by the way, we really welcome difficult people in the chat. If there's anyone difficult there with any strong menopause experiences, we'd love you to put your thoughts forward, because I could say, well, look, great, it's great, Rex, that you're talking about what connection with the moon, what is this cosmos thing? But is that really going to help when I'm having hot flushes at work and I'm trying to move on through my day and it's embarrassing, or I'm having these AWOL kind of emotional sweats, I'm not sleeping, I'm really pissed off. What are you telling me to do? Connect to the moon? Where are we coming from?
All right. So the key aspect is calm mind. And calm mind is something that has to be cultivated.
Mm.
Let me slow this down a little bit as regards where we're going with this. So that first cycle happens, and it's wonderful if, your mother, your granny, your aunt, or even your father, in that case, told you about it, of what was coming, so you were prepared. So that is giving you your sovereignty. That is giving you a sense of ownership and management about your body as regards this occurs, and it happens on a monthly basis, etc., etc. Now, the premenopause situation comes about, and what happens, this is what I have observed in my work over the decades, because, I've had clients, women who come, they're regular clients of mine, and then they come in with the menopause conversation. And what I've observed, the movements are different.
Mm.
They speak about maybe at times a bit of a stiffness in their joints. So in other words, there's the relatedness with space, the space of their own bodies. There is a shift going on.
Mm-hmm.
That shift that is going on is another level of communication that becomes available to the woman. That oftentimes when that is happening and the man is not informed, her partner is not informed about it, it's like the woman is starting to talk about sort of, how best to put it, knowledge. She's really coming from knowledge. She's coming from knowing things, but yet it's outside the box. It's of another dimension. And oftentimes for the man, it's like, listen, you need to take a pill. You need to go and see the psychologist, or you need to go and see some doctor, because, it's like you're losing it. So that is this shutdown that...
Could you give us, sorry, Rex, yeah, but it would be great certainly for me to say, okay, when you say about movement, could you even think of, without mentioning a name or confidentiality, is there some particular thing you're saying? There's a locking of a joint, or what is it that you're seeing people experience in terms of, is it lack of movement or is it something different?
Okay, there's a hesitancy with the movement. At times it could be stronger than that word, but I would say there's a hesitancy. So I know this client for many years. She's a regular, she comes maybe once a month for shiatsu, or so then the premenopause happens. She walks in the room and I sense something is different. I don't know what it is. I'm a man, right? So I have to listen. This has been the key part of my work over the decades. I listen a lot, okay? So this listening, this is how I picked up my information. So I listen. So she starts talking, and then she mentions, I feel stiff, I feel awkward. So what I'm talking about is that there's an aspect of how we are in space, who we are in space. This is physiological. This is not a rexism. I'm talking about this, it is. And the item that is connected with that is the proprioceptors. Proprioceptors are in our joints. And proprioceptors have a link with space. So how we are in space. People who do yoga or whatever, at times you stand up a certain way, so how we feel in space. So that at times for women, especially in the early stage, the premenopause stage, that is a clear sign. And that means another communication is starting to happen with the body. If that is ignored, you're going into that rocket situation of, the hot flashes, overwhelm, whatever. Because that communication is one, as you become receptive to it, which calm mind gives you, something else changes. Because with calm mind, what starts to happen is that the alpha brainwave frequency in your brain starts occurring, which creates deeper levels of intuition, which also creates a healing quality, which also means there's a deeper listening to what is happening in this space. This is important. If that is engaged with, those situations you speak about tends to be way down, especially when diet is looked at, especially when other lifestyle changes, and that just drops away because you are acknowledging the influence of the cosmos on your biological function and on your body.
Absolutely. And I'm just looking in the chat now. There's a few little comments because, as you say, that isn't part of the day-to-day culture. I don't think many people hear what the way you're saying in day-to-day. I mean, would you like to pause for a couple of questions now, Rex? Or
yeah, sure. I can take questions rather than, Rex is speaking to himself.
Because I know that whole aspect of the proprioceptors and the movement, we'll talk a little bit more about that later on, won't we? Because that's going to form one of the 3 programs that's going to happen in the autumn. There were some nice little comments here anyway as we're carrying on, so please continue to use the chat. I think Marcia is saying it's an override, suppress it, hide it, shame approach in modern world. And she's personally so interested to hear another way of being around this. And Katrina, I think, yeah.
Thank you, Marcia, for sharing. I've observed that. That's very much, that's quote unquote the norm. So.
No, it's great to hear that Katrina was lucky enough to have an easy passage through menopause. And I'm sure that was with a lot of the healthy, positive things that you do for yourself, as did my mum. And I'm looking to support others in my family who are worried about what will happen to them. And of course, thinking about HRT. I mean, that's something we've often chatted about, Rex, isn't it? That this sort of idea that this thunderstorm is going to take over the world and the only solution is HRT. Of course, it's an option, but it seems to be sometimes the only way. And we have another thing from Marcia here. My brother and dad could smell hormonal change. And when my bleed was due and happening, my mum had a history on when people were aware in the household of when her bleed was happening. And my mum had a hysterectomy in the 70s when I was 5. And she was 35. I'm sorry to hear that. And went into menopause, I believe. hysterectomy was the cure for everything in those days, just to cut it out. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. And menopause was never discussed by aunties, grandma, etc., other than in passing, not the sacredness, power, or how the body changes. Yeah. We have something from Sylvia. Hi, Sylvia. My understanding is that the menopause is quite cultural, and it has become focused on hot flushes and yin deficiency type symptoms. Yeah, you can hear from this that Sylvia is a Chinese medical practitioner. In the West, the West dominates the conversation because of the pharmaceutical industry. Yeah. And Sue, I experienced menopause spiritually and emotionally more than physically, in the sense that it felt like a complete dissolution and unraveling. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those. Absolutely.
So shall we get to the calm mind meditation?
Yeah, I think unless there's any major shouts down against that, a bit of calm mind would be lovely, Rex. So all's good.
Okay.
So if people want to make themselves comfortable, there'll be a little meditation now for, a maximum of 5 minutes or so.
Will be a bit, right? I think we will go on for a little longer because I'll let it sort of unfold from in my listening to what was shared somehow, how best to put it, we're dealing with harmonics, so somehow there's a listening to what I've heard with the sharing. So finding ways to create a music or a symphony that encompasses that, but brings a deeper level of harmony to us as a community right here, right now. I mean, this is important to know, although there's space, we are in different places in the world, throughout the globe, different people are in different places, but nevertheless, in this conversation, we can be, and in this listening, we can be in a place of community, of sharing a focus, of sharing a calm mind. So keeping that in mind and what I just mentioned about space, let us go there with a calm mind. So in your imagination, I'd like to ask you to find some area on planet Earth, right here where we are, wherever it is that you're living, in your imagination, like a favorite spot where you like to sit either on a big stone or on the earth itself. So put yourself on that stone or put your bum onto the earth. You could have something below you, a towel or whatever, or just directly with you, sitting on the earth. Allow your legs to be relaxed so they can be crossed, or you could have your feet on the ground, feeling the earth below your feet. But please do not lay down. Be in a place of awareness, so you are sitting rather than lying down, as this is an aspect of being conscious of cultivating calm mind. So in that sitting position on the earth, give yourself permission to have a breath that is deep, but not deep with effort. It's like an effortless, deep breath. Allowing your tummy to have a sense of space as the air comes in. Allowing your navel to have a sense of spaciousness behind it rather than be tight and locked in. For as you create that spaciousness at the back of your navel, You're connecting directly back to that lifeline of your connection with your mother. And along that ancestral line of DNA of father, mother, going back generations upon generations upon generations, all in that sense of being supported by them with your calm mind, with feeling a sense of calmness of who you are on planet Earth. And within that sense of feeling at ease and comfortable on planet Earth, give yourself permission to allow whatever fragrances are in your environment to be present for you. As we well know, when a woman is pregnant, her sensitivity to fragrances is heightened. That aspect of heightened sensitivity to fragrances is connected with the earth element. That feeling of bringing a newborn onto the earth triggers a sense of being connected with the earth. Of course, we are here in a different conversation, but just mentioning those things as regards the cosmic aspect of the birth experience and the menopause experience and the elements in our lives and the sense of space. Allow ourselves to give thanks for those elements. Give thanks for space. Give thanks for earth. Give thanks for our sensitivity with fragrances, with smell, with a feeling of being at ease, with a calm mind on planet Earth. Let's just be with that for a while and be in that silence of sitting on the earth and being supported by the earth and being nourished by the earth and being stabilized by the earth. We give thanks. I invite you now to slowly return to our narrative and our chat this evening and your listening. So thank you very much for generous listening to what I just shared. Any feedback, comments from anyone that they want to tell us about, because we're all part of this community for this, for what I just did. So whatever you're sharing is also part of, in a way, unconsciously, an experience for others who are listening and who are participating here this evening.
Yeah, and please don't be shy. You're just very welcome to just unmute yourself, and if you feel it, just to say something. Or actually, it's lovely. Marcia has written something. Thanks, Marcia. Yes, she just mentioned that I noticed a tightness in the muscles and ligaments around my womb and hips that I wasn't aware of. Wow, that's wonderful.
And so, Marcia, were you able to allow that to allow it to let it go, or are you still holding that?
Still holding a little, but that was so beautifully led, Rex, the connecting with my ancestors. So there was an echo feeling of my tightness that I held within my body and within feminine lineage. So that just being aware, and then as I became present with it, just letting go. So after the call, I'll go and do some stretch. But it was just really beautiful because I'm sort of 9 or 10 months since I last had a bleed. I had very regular periods before and no problems. And just noticing that as we did that journey, particularly sitting on the rock, I went to one of my favorite places. I grew up in Derbyshire. The vitality and the power that's still there that I was aware of, because I don't feel menopausal, I've not had flushes or anything. But the the unacknowledged power and creativity and juiciness that's still in my body was what was very present. And it was like the tightness of the muscle and the womb was how I'd been defining myself, like other people do, of, oh, you must be menopausal because I'm 55. And so the beautiful dance of the two, of it's not what you think, was just very softening for me. So I really appreciate that. I really enjoyed it. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for sharing, Marcia.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else with any comments or even questions or anything?
Lynn, would you like, you're the next in line here, would you like to say your comment, or would you like me to read it? It's up to you.
I'll unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I always find it incredibly moving when asked to think about one's mother, or all the mothers before, within that belly navel space. It just feels incredibly powerful. So it was beautiful just to sit with that, and I just have to agree with Marcia. You just led it so beautifully, Rex.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Lynn, actually, when you mentioned your belly, I was just feeling, wow, that's if some visual artists could present the female belly like a mandala, that would be something quite tremendous. I know there's probably visual artists in our midst here.
But it's also that the belly needs to be, the woman's belly needs to be so much more celebrated, and not just in its pregnant state. There is so much pulling in and tucking of tails and holding and constriction. And it breaks my heart every time I see a woman walking in, like a young, beautiful woman, into my classes, or for others I don't know, movement classes, yoga. And you just feel the holding, decades of just holding, taking up as little space as you can. And it's important to let women enjoy having a belly more.
Wow.
By the way, this is also part of in the Asian countries, there is less sort of drama around menopause, because that aspect of the softness of the belly is acknowledged. It's not like holding on, holding in. I mean, so this is very much how that is. And so I just mentioned that. So again, we come back. Okay, let me just say, hold on, I talked enough. Let me listen to your round. Let me shut my mouth and hear what else is being shared.
It's interesting. Everyone's coming in with different flavors, which is lovely. Lorraine is coming in. Would you like to say your comment, Lorraine? Or
I think it was very much that during the meditation, I just connected with that sense of being pregnant. So again, the belly and the fullness. And for me, it was a real realization that while the years I had been pregnant, were very definitely times I wasn't connected with the miracle of it, the cosmic connection. You know, it was so there's a celebration of coming more into that now, but a sense of the loss of how that could have been a more beautiful experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we have Marcia, who's commenting again about the smells and the fragrances of naturalness of woman to be celebrated, honored, and welcomed. Thank you.
Yeah, the aspect of the olfactory system of smell is very much linked with the earth as regards this aspect in the biological system of the body. It has this link. And this is explored very deeply, especially in the Vedic tradition and the Tibetan tradition, the aspect of, you know, the smell and the earth element. It's very much present in that. And so, yes, I mean, I just touched on it. That's a much deeper conversation, but the exploring of that and the exploring of, or the cultivating a relatedness with the aspect of your navel. You know how ridiculous this is sounding, but I mean, that's the best words I can find. Because that is a gateway into the ancestral link. I don't want to get into that because I could talk at length about that at a very personal level in my life, and how profound that is as regards, you know, what can come in dreams or whatever. This is like, it's really like a, you know, it's an email that happens in that domain, especially if you know, you are comfortable with that. Fortunately, I'm in a situation in my life whereby I adored my parents, both my parents. I just love them. I mean, that has remained constant. I mean, I know at times that is not the case for some of us, but anyway, but I have that aspect. And so, you know, anyhow, shut my mouth, enough.
Great, but I think at the same time, Rex, it's great to hear the different aspects coming in, because we might, you know, just point to that for the autumn events, like in a way, the little bits you're hearing from Rex. I'd just like to say that yeah, you'll never get exactly what you expect. So if you think this is a conversation about that, it'll probably be about something else. So we'll expect the unexpected. And but Sylvia is bringing in a very critical aspect that I would imagine you'd like to speak about yourself. This is a very core point here.
Yes, I thought it was a beautiful meditation, and I'm so grateful, and it was beautifully held. But I found, so I'm an adoptive mum, and I was unable to conceive. I was pregnant at one point in my life, but it wasn't the right time for me to have a child, I felt, and I really made a very considered decision about it. And then I never got pregnant after that. And when I adopted, it was when I actually adopted my son when I was 50. He was 7, so I was menopausal pretty much. And I had no problems with no real problems with the menopause in the traditional sense, but I did have very, very, very bad stiff shoulders and neck. And when I researched it, I found that this was a very common symptom of menopause in the East. But it's not talked about in the West at all. It's become totally focused on hot flushes. And a researcher who I was very interested in, I don't know if you know Professor Volker Schied at all. He's a German,
but go ahead.
He's a German, Chinese-speaking historian and practitioner of Chinese medicine, and he got some government funding to do a research into menopause, and he looked at the way that it was looked at in the East, and saw that it was very different, and how in China, with the advent of traditional Chinese medicine or modern TCM, it had got very distorted into kidney yin deficiency and become hot flushes. And actually, when you looked at what was going on in Japan, in the herbal traditions of Japan, it was a very, very different approach to the way it was treated there. And it was much more about symptoms of fullness rather than deficiency, and an excess that had to be supported. Anyway, very interesting article that he wrote, which really changed my view. But anyway, going back to the conversation about the adoption. So I find when I'm asked to think about family and my mother, I have a lovely mother and a very good, I have no problem. But there's part of my heart that goes out to my son, who is who has not seen his family since he was 6 years old, when there was a final contact, because his a very, very, very severe criminality, I'll say, really, towards him, abuse. And so he has no connection, and he's not, he's, when he says family, I'm his family. So he has no naval connection. And, I'm his family, and we have a little dog, and he says, it's you and the dog, Mum, that's it, And so so that was going on in my head. It was that little conversation in my head with myself about, my son. But anyway, I found myself on this beautiful rock in Greece where we laid my mum's ashes, and I felt deeply, deeply connected with my sense of power and who I am in all these very difficult situations I've been put in as a mother, because it's not been easy, not because of my son. That's not been easy, but I expected that. But the way that the state is very is not supporting adoptive families at all, and what happened to us was a dreadful experience, which I won't go into. But I felt in my power about it. It was wonderful. I really am grateful for that. That it was like all this stuff that happened. No, it was. I'm okay. I'm here, and yeah.
Okay. So one thing, this is a very different conversation, and the aspect about adoption that you're sharing here with us. Wonderful. I really appreciate you bringing this up. I'll just touch upon it for a little while because it's going in a different direction than what I'm here to talk about. The aspect, and your adopted son is 7 years of age. Is that how
No,
old?
he's 23. I adopted him.
Oh, he's 23 now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I adopted him when I was 50.
Okay.
I'm 65 now, so yeah.
Okay. All right. The one thing that I could suggest, which of course is shifting the mindset for him at this age, at 7, it would have been a smoother time to do it. But the connection with the earth and the connection with creating like a mandala, which, you are in a mandala conversation. And so we're really going back into, like, quote unquote, an indigenous aspect as regards how we are dealing with life and creating like a sacred mandala by drawing a circle on the earth and doing some sort of ceremony in the sense of, because he's part of the earth. And yes, at times in wars and times of, the dysfunctionality of us human beings, the aspect of children being abandoned or whatever, but the aspect of connecting with a child or wanting to look after a child, all of that is there, and that is coming from a heart space, and that needs to be celebrated. But I can't address that in there's another way for me to talk about it, which will be getting into your birth date and also your son's birth date and whatever, which is looking at what then would support. But that's
Another conversation. Yeah.
It's another conversation.
Yeah.
But
I didn't want to bring the personal in a way, but I just wanted to hold a space for people who don't have mothers that they can they don't have they can't, that connection is blocked. And I love the idea of connecting with the earth instead. That feels really lovely.
Sure, there are many approaches to that, but thanks for bringing it up, and I will write something about that and share about that. So maybe a poem may come, but anyway, over to you, Sarah.
Well, somehow the deep conversation, the rich conversation is inspiring other people to come forward. And it's interesting, Marcia, your comment here, like in a way, that whole thing you were saying, Rex, about birth and the link with the menopause and pregnancy. It's so lovely that people are bringing every aspect forward. So Marcia, would you like to say this comment directly yourself, or will I read it?
I was just curious as the conversation's unfolding. Thank you, everybody. I'm gaining so much. I had 2 terminations, late 20s, early 30s. One, my baby was quite sick, and reactions to medication. And then the second one, a few years later, I chose to have a termination. So pregnant twice, but never gone beyond the first trimester. So I'm wondering about thoughts about how that can influence menopause, or if it does, or what your thoughts are.
Okay. That is a conversation about sacred womb and the aspect about a child who came but whose time was not present, or for whatever reason a termination happened, but there's a shadow in the womb, and there's a whole process as regards the healing of that, in the sense of the key aspect in that is about acknowledging a relatedness to that space of that being, of that entity who came in, was part of the sacred womb, and left in the sense of didn't manifest as regards a birth, but left, but nevertheless had that passage in the sacredness of the womb, the creative aspect. So the acknowledgement of that is of great importance. And in the sense of also, if one has a family, like, children before or children after, at some level, and this does not have to be in the family dialogue or narrative, but for the mother or for the parents, that some way of acknowledging that being, something else happens. Something else happens as regards a completion. And so the menopause, for you to share that, Marcia, is like you're bringing that into the space of consciousness, rather than leaving it unconscious. And so where that takes you, that's only you can know that, but I'm giving some thoughts about it as regards, sacred womb. The aspect of sacred womb also, there are mandalas of that in the Buddhist tradition and the Hindu traditions also, where they have images of that. In the Japanese Shingon Buddhists, in their temples, they have big tankers where such mandalas exist and such devotions are acknowledged. And I think also in indigenous cultures, they have ways of talking about that. So that aspect of, because how I'm really communicating about menopause, it's really reconnecting with the cosmos as an elder, as someone who has a capacity to have another listening that is outside of the patriarchal one of just A, B, C, D. It's not linear, it's spiralic. It's a mandala quality, whereby, and this was very much part of that, of the elders, where in fact, they were the ones who were consulted. The elder women were the ones who were consulted as regards certain guidance in the community. This was the norm. Was the norm. Rather than, you know, quote unquote, you're old, there's no purpose, there's no whatever, and this kind of, you know, just abusive. It's in a way, it's a ritual abuse as regards the menopause and how how it has been dealt with and the medicalization of it. So yeah, I mean, so I'm really opening out, I'm really coming from that quote unquote spiritual or that other domain of listening and relatedness to us as, you know, connections with the cosmos.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I mean, text me or whatever. And by the way, you know, people do have consultations with me, and Sarah could say more of that, or send you also, you know, I do personal chats with people. So yeah, I mean, there are different ways of it, but engage with it as regards an aspect of acknowledging that was part of the journey of the sacred womb that you carried, and as that ending of the flow of blood in that direction, it opens up another pathway, which is to the cosmos, with another listening that becomes present, and the levels of intuition is moved to another level, and other levels of guidance come to you too from those other domains. Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, Rex, it's so touching to see and to feel all of this unfolding as we're together, because, you know, we can say the word mandala, but I'm sure each one of us here in the room can feel that there's all those elements that play out in the biology of the feminine, the sovereignty of the feminine being. So it's really touching to hear people's stories. And, you know, Lynn's making some very important comments there about how not all babies arrive earthside, but they touch our souls and teach us so much. So so there's that honoring in that, and all these experiences are, I can't see that bit here, but are held, is it? Yeah, held, I'm sure, in our wombs, and we need to share our stories and, yeah, to express that.
Yeah, I mean, okay, sorry, it's something that is very much part of it's a key suggestion that I have for women, in the sense of that transition of menopause, premenopause, is to do a journal. Because there's another listening that is present, and other feelings are arising, and other insights are happening. And they're precious. I mean, because, you know, you are getting your own language. You're being, you are going through an initiation of getting a new language as regards how you relate with life, how you relate with the cosmos. Something is then starting to occur for you with this. And so to have a journal, this makes, yeah, it's rich. And it has a quality of ownership, and it has a quality of honoring your sovereignty.
Well, Rex, we've touched on so many fascinating aspects and points, and I'm wondering, could we kind of move a little bit towards some of the themes that we'll be exploring in September? Because as I understand it, the suggestion is to have 3 events, and we're still open to deciding the exact dates and finding if there's interest, whether it's more weekend based or evening based. You know, in my little joke with Rex, I was saying it's like, let's put 3 buckets together, and Rex can kind of pour the different themes into the one. And yeah, we haven't even touched on thyroid, but I know that was one of the ones that is coming forward, isn't it?
Okay. So seeing you mentioned buckets, let's stay with buckets. It's very down to earth, and it's not up in the air. So yes, there's a theme about thyroid. What I've observed in my work over the decades has been, that's a big conversation. Let me put it that way. And the thyroid gland has a lot to do with self-expression. And many women, especially when the orientation towards the menopause is one that is very medicalized or patriarchal, the self-expression gets dented. And that impacts the thyroid gland. Because self-expression, you know, is the throat. It's the aspect of your speech, of the aspect of conveying things. But the thyroid gland also has a whole relatedness with space, in the sense of, as we know, if there's some radiation leak, strontium-90 can impact the thyroid and start, you know, swinging that around in a big way. Interestingly, green tea, the Japanese green tea especially, it can be Chinese too, sorry, I'm not marketing any particular brand here. This helps with neutralizing that radiation. Okay, we also have this situation whereby in certain environments where a woman is heavily criticized or judged a lot or whatever, again, hits the thyroid. Again, that whole aspect of self-expression. So that is something that will be, that I'll share. Of course, do not, you know, do not hear it as quote unquote, that at times thyroid gland issues do not have an issue of, you know, what's going on with the blood. I'm not dismissing that at all. Please do not think that I am ignoring that. I am not. But there are other aspects surrounding the thyroid gland that at times are not spoken about. And some of what I'm speaking here is, and in the whole menopause conversation, the thyroid gland I have observed at times is one that gets sort of hit at a certain, at some level. Oftentimes, I'm not saying 100%, but many times that goes on. So that will be one. A second bucket is one really dealing about the earth and nutrition. So in other words, like that olfactory aspect, like what foods, what type of nutrition to engage with, what type of lifestyle to adopt or to encourage and to discover, not just, you know, quote unquote, bringing out a menu card, but also for you, of course, checking it out, but also for you to explore what works for you, rather than just reading it. This is what I need to do. This is what's good for me. No. I'm not working that way. It's like what works, what you're discovering, what works for you. You do this. I had a good sleep. I this and that. So you work with that way, rather than just a menu card, fix it, do it. then I'm just being a patriarch with, the information rather than you being engaged with the responsibility of what works for you. So there is that. And then the last bucket is one of celebrating the fire, because that whole emotion, and at a certain level, I'm kind of dealing with the fire in a way whereby we're having a dance with it, that the hot flashes is not something that dominates the menopause experience for the woman. But nevertheless, there are issues at times with anger, with rage, with shame, and all these are emotions that if they are not kind of processed or moved to one side, and certain rituals I will share about ways of dealing with that, then this can overwhelm the menopause experience.
Thank you so much, Rex. And yeah, my understanding is even the meditations, that the intention is to have a meditation related to each of those aspects as well. And we're also just forming those buckets, if you like, or those themes, and looking at which areas to address. So if we get feedback and there are particular things and themes that people would love to address, that will be very much woven into the material that's going to be offered. So we can speak more about that now, or send people information about it. Yeah.
Also, what would be helpful for us would be to indicate what's your preference. Is it more like a Saturday or on a weekend, or is it more on an evening, or what? What's your preference? We're looking at like 2 hours. The last one can be 3 hours. We see, so that's where we are sort of, those are the areas we're looking at.
Mm. So there's a moment or two for a last question, and if the question doesn't come now, you're very welcome to email us, and we'll do our best to address that as well. Is there any last things that people would like to ask about? Anyway, I can certainly recommend a one-on-one session with Rex. He tends to take you to places, as I've said, that other people don't take you to, and uses approaches that are really quite different, be it certain kind of pressure points or certain rituals or certain ways. And maybe I'll just finish a little bit. I think there's all people are really appreciating the quality of awareness and the nature of the conversation. Yeah, I would just feel actually to read one of the comments that a recent kind of testimonial, if I can find that easily here, because Rex has run programs about the menopause in many different countries at different times of his career. This is a very interesting little comment here. So one woman, a testimonial, she said, my menopause started a few months before my 52nd birthday. I was in a 14-year long-distance relationship that ended abruptly and unexpectedly via a text message. My ex sent me on, that was sent on a cell phone. The shock made my body close up completely. Managing my grief and menopause symptoms has been truly life-changing. Rex Lazelle has given me the tools to cope with these symptoms, which included hair loss, lack of sleep, hot flashes, anxiety, depression, the whole gamut. And all of these things were dealt with great sensitivity, and everything was very valuable, that she is eternally grateful. And we have another one that is equally touching, from a lady that I think is actually very moving in itself, that she was only 33 when she came to a menopause workshop with Rex. That in itself really says something to me. She took the time to travel from the Caribbean to the Nordic countries as a birthday present for herself. And the menopause workshop was one of the warmest, safest, and nurturing spaces she's experienced. She comments that Rex guides his sessions from a deep sense of knowing, rooted in traditional healing modalities and his delivery brings flow and ease. It's not a packaged experience where you tick the box. And anyway, it's a long, beautiful statement, but she says as she closes her eyes, I'm back sitting in that room with Rex and all the wonderful women. And all that I learned in the 3 days was more than any university degree could teach me on how to be at ease with myself, how to welcome changes in my body rather than fear them, to flow with aging and this special time of the menopause, to have a practice to turn to. And she heartily and wholeheartedly recommends journeys and workshops with Rex. So that's,
Thank you, Sarah.
yeah. So thank you, everybody. Delightful. And we're complete for tonight, and we'll be in touch with you to send you details about the program. And you're always welcome to approach Rex also with information about a consultation. So thank you for your attention very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah, for hosting this, and thanks for the sharing and the comments and the feedback. Yeah, this was very lively. I appreciated that, and also the realism of the questions and just the experiences that were shared here this evening. Thank you. Deeply grateful for this. All the best. Keep in touch.